All right, guys, welcome back. In the last lesson, we went ahead and learned how to create a new post using this new structure for our post right here where we have an ID and a title. Well, now we're going to look at how do we update an existing post, right? So we know that we're going to be doing this. First of all, I can delete this return there. It's not doing anything. But okay, so we know we're going to be doing this update right here. If the person sends us a blog/post form request, we know they want to create a new post. However, if they send it with a post ID at the end, then we know that they have a post. So that means we know they want to update a post. What are we going to do though for that? Well, what we're going to do is pretty simple. It's pretty cool how we're going to be avoiding this duplication of code. We're not going to have a separate form for updating and a separate form for creation because they're going to have the same exact fields there. So there's no use of having those. So let's just go ahead and render postform.html when the user sends us a request with post ID on there. So let's go ahead and spin up our server here, python app.py, and let's go ahead and check that out. If I go ahead and click on the link it gives me here we go. We're going to check out the blog. I'll read more, whatever. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say /postform. Now we come here, we can create a new post, right? But say we wanted to update post form. We wanted to update the post number 1. Well, it still says create a new post, so we need to fix that. But it still just renders the same thing. Ideally, though, it would say update post number 1 in the title here, and it would say maybe it would have the title of the post already in this text field. So let's go ahead and look at how we can do that. Well, if we're given the post ID, right, let's go ahead and print out that post ID, save, let's reload, let's put in reload twice, there we go. So we reload, we get printed out 1, right? And if we go up here, we can find the object where the ID is 1, right? So we can get the right post if we go ahead and use that post ID. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and say that, first of all, we know we need to be working with that global post in here. So let's say global post. So we know that we want to work with the global post. And then we can say that the post ID, just like we did to get the details, we're going to do the pretty much same thing here. So let's go ahead and copy this, paste that in there. So we're going to cast it to an integer so we can use it as an index. We're going to copy this down here. We're going to say if the post ID is less than or equal to length of post, which means we do have that post, then we want to do that. Else, we're going to be wanting to do the same thing we did before. If we can't find that post, however, we want to abort with the 404, post could not be found. So we can go ahead and test this right away. If we go back to this server, reload, and it looks like we have an issue here. Oh, this needs to be up here. We need to be casting to an integer before we try to compare it to another integer, which is what the length function gives us. So now we've done that, we can go ahead and reload again. Reload, there we go. So if we come back here, no problem, right? It just sent us the create new post. It sent us to the post form template. But let's try post ID number 3, right? Post 3 cannot be found. And okay, that makes sense because the third post could not be found because there is no third post. However, what if we change the ID here to be 3? Let's go ahead and reload again. And it still says post 3 could not be found. And that kind of makes sense and kind of doesn't, right? Because there's not 3 posts here, but we have a post with an ID of 3. So we kind of have to change up our logic now. We're no longer just checking to see, okay, do we have a post with that ID because we have that many posts? Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to say, do we have a post with that ID because we actually have a post where the ID key equals 3 or 4, whatever they give us. So we need to check for that. So we now don't necessarily need to use the post ID as an integer, really. So we could actually come up here and we could turn these into strings, right? Because maybe they're not going to be just numbers. Maybe it'll be XH72, right? And we're going to have these random IDs be created later on. But let's say we have 2 posts with the IDs of 1 and 3, right? And they're just strings because there's no use to having them as integers anymore because that's not how we're getting access to them anymore. So now we just need to know, okay, do we have that post ID? Then we need to get a post using that ID. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say post by ID equals, and this syntax may look a little weird if you've never seen this before, but this is called a list comprehension in Python. And it's going to go like this. Post by ID equals the post for post in posts if post ID equals the post ID passed into us. Okay, so what that does is it says, okay, we're going to loop through the post. So for post in posts, if we find a post where the post ID equals the post ID that was given to us in this function, we want to return that as a new list to post. So if I had 2 posts right here whose ID was 3, the length of the list returned by this list comprehension would be 2. However, we shouldn't have 2 posts with the same ID, so that length should always be 1. Or 0 if it couldn't find it. So if it couldn't find it, it is 0, but if it could, it should be 1, right? So now instead of checking the ID against the length of post, what we can do is we can check the length. If the length of the post by ID, which is a list, if that is equal to 1, then we should return the template. Also, let's go ahead and pass in the post that we found. And since that length is 1, we know that the first post in that list, the only post in that list, will be index 0, which is the post that we want. I hope that makes sense. So we're going to pass that in as the post variable to this template post form, which we're not doing anything with it yet, but we're going to pass it in and we're going to do something with it in just a second. Next, we need to check, okay, else if, which in Python is just elif. Else if the length of post by ID equals 0, then we should return an abort with the 404 because we couldn't find it. However, what if the length is something else? So if the length is -1, which shouldn't make any sense, or if it's 2, say we found 2 posts with that ID. Well, now we want to return another type of error, all right? Abort, and if you don't know what type of error, because I'm not sure of the type of error off the top of my head, we're just going to look up HTTP errors right here, and it should give us a nice handy list somewhere. Okay, here we go. 400 errors, I think that's what we want. Maybe actually 500. Because we want, it's kind of just this internal server error. We stored 2 posts with the same ID. We shouldn't have done that. That's bad on our part. So that's a server error, right? So I'm going to look at some of these other ones. 406, not acceptable. That kind of makes sense, maybe. Expectation failed. The expectation, I think, no, that's for something else. Let's not use it. Let's just use a 500. Just an internal server error. So we're going to return the error 500. Bad result using post ID. Okay, so it's kind of vague, but it at least tells us that there's something weird going on that we need to fix, right? So there we go. So if the length of the list comprehension trying to find the post is 1, then we know we found the 1 post. If it's 0, we know we can't find the post at all. And if it's anything else, something weird going on and we need to fix it. So let's go ahead and reload our server again. Okay, so if we use 3, we're fine. If we use 2, 404, page not found, or post not found really, because even though we have 2 posts, the IDs are 1 and 3. So we should have 1 and we should have 3. So 3 worked. 2 did not, and 1 works. If we pass back anything else, post 12 can't be found. Okay, so that should make sense, hopefully. So let's go over this post form now. We know that we are passing in a post to this post form, but sometimes we are and sometimes we're not. So what we can do here is we can say, if we have the post, do one thing. If we don't have the post, do something else, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Now, if we come in here, where do we want to submit this action to? We could duplicate the whole form, right? But we could do something else. So let's add the slash here. And then let's say this right here should be post ID if we have a post, else it should just be nothing. So hopefully this makes sense, but if not, what we're basically saying is, okay, if we have a post, it should be blog/postform/7, right? If that's the post that we're currently editing. If we got a post sent to us as a parameter, then we're going to access the ID property of that post, and that's going to be appended to the end. Otherwise, it's just going to be nothingness. It's just going to be a blank string, and it'll just look like that. So that is what is going to send us to one of these routes, depending on whether or not we had a post ID or not. So let's go ahead and go back. Now, this is actually going to give us a problem, right? So let's go ahead and delete that 12, and let's just go to a blank post form. Okay, so we're getting an internal server error. What is this? It says a name error. Name post is not defined. So basically what it's doing is it's saying, okay, post. What is post? And since it can't find it, instead of returning a falsy value, it throws a name error. We couldn't find it. So what we need to do is if we have a post ID, so if post ID, then get the correct post. Once we have the correct post, go ahead and return a template and pass that post in. However, what if we don't have a post ID? Well, we still need to pass the post in. This is just one of the many ways you could solve this problem here, but we're going to do it by passing in none as the post. Well, now the post is nothing. It still doesn't exist, but we sent it in as a parameter so it knows what it is now. So now it comes in, and this will actually return a falsy value. So if we inspect this form right here, the action is just a blank slash at the end. There's no post ID appended there. So we can go ahead and use this now that we have either passed in the post or passed in none as the post, so that when we test for the post, we can decide whether or not we should append the ID of the post to the end of the action. So there we go. That's simple enough, right? Now we can do the same kind of thing here. If you're not aware, there's another attribute we can give the input here in an HTML form, and that is the value of the input. So we could say the value equals a cool title, right? And if we save that and come over here and reload, then a cool title automatically is what's in this text box here. But if we come over here, we don't want to just say a cool title, right? We want to say, we can do the same kind of thing here. So we can say post title. So if we're updating a current post, we'll be given a post to work with. And then so we want to say, if we have a post, so it should be the post title if we have a post, else it should be nothing again. So let's come here, reload. Since we're not giving it a post ID, it has nothing. So there's nothing here as the value. You can see value, just nothingness, right? But if we say 1 and load here, then there we go. The value gets set equal to post 1 because that's the title of the post. And since we said we gave it a post ID, it was able to find a post and pass it in. So now the last thing we have to do is instead of saying create new post, we want to update the existing post. So we can do this easily enough. We can say, right, we already know how to do an if statement. So if post, we want to do an h1, say update existing post ID, right? There we go. And then we can say else create new post and then end this if statement. If we save that, we come back, reload one more time. This gets changed to update existing post. So there we have it. We are using the same function in our server right here, and we are using the same form right here in the same template, and we're just checking whether or not we have a post or not, and dynamically changing what that page looks like. Okay, so now that we're rendering the form, well, it's going to dynamically post to either blog/postform or blog/postform/ the ID of the post we're trying to update. So if we come in here, well, now if we have a post ID, we don't necessarily want to just print that we updated an existing post and lie to the user because we didn't actually do anything. We want to actually do something here, right? So let's go ahead and do that. We are going to, if we have a post ID, what we want to do is kind of the same stuff we did up here, right? So first of all, we already know we're using the global post. That's cool. We're already doing that. But we want to say post by ID equals post for post in post, so loop over the posts. And if the posts we're looping over at the given time, if its ID is equal to the post ID that was passed to us, then we want to return it as one of the posts in the list. Then we're kind of going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to copy this, paste it in. So if the length of that post by ID list was 1, well, we found a singular post. That's great. So we want to do something here with that post. So we don't want to return. We just want to update the post, right? Here, else if it's 0, then we can still send an abort. You know, we couldn't find a post to update. And if it's anything else, we send a 500 bad result. So that works. So let's just go ahead and focus on this update post right here. So let's think about what we have to do here. What we need to do is we need to get the index of the post we're trying to update. So let's go ahead and do that first. We're going to say the post index equals post index, and we're going to pass in the post that we found by searching for the ID, which remember is in the 0th spot. So what this does, Python syntax here, it says, okay, here's an object, go look in the post array and return me the index of that object. So let's go ahead and print this out. Why don't we? Let's just print out the post index there. There we go. All right, so let's save that. Let's come back here, reload again. There we go. Let's just submit. So we send that post request, and when we send that post request, well, since we did that for post ID number 1, if we come up here, we look post ID number 1, that is the 0th element, and we correctly got printed out 0 as the index. So cool, that's working. So we have the post index, so now we can replace it where we need to. So let's go ahead and create that updated post. So let's say updated post equals, and remember they have two keys, the ID and the title. So first of all, title. First of all, what is the ID going to be here? Well, the ID should be the same ID that was used to get it, right? So if it was 1, we're trying to update the first post. We shouldn't change the ID. All we're doing here is changing the title. So let's go ahead and change this title now. Well, if you remember, you should remember how to get this, especially since it's just down below. It's request.forms.post title, because that's still the name of that text field that has the post title. So there we go. We have an updated post now. Now the last thing we should do here is just say posts at the post index, right? We know what index we're trying to update. So at that index, it should equal updated post. And there we go. So now if we go ahead and come here, back over to our server, reload. Oh, something's going wrong. Let's see what's going wrong. Looks like we had a little syntax error there, so we're just going to go ahead and spin our server back up. Reload again. Here we go. So now it knows we want to update an existing post because of everything we've said before. So let's go ahead and change this to post 1 version 2. Submit that, and right away, there we go. The details for post 1 show us that that title was now updated. So there we go. That is how you update the post when you send a post request from your form over to the post form submit function here. So there we go. Now we know how to both get different routes on the get request and how to post different routes on the post request, depending whether or not the user is trying to update an existing post or create a new post. So that's all we have for this lesson. In the next lesson, what we're going to look at is how to do that last operation of the CRUD operations, create, read, update, destroy, or delete. The last one is that delete, right? So the last thing we need to do is delete any post that we may want to delete. And we're going to look at how to do that here in the next lesson.